In the previous video, I talked about the causes or the background of Renesa. What caused Renesa? Why did it happen? I will dwell upon the same topic in this lecture and will tell in detail what caused Renesa and what did Renesa, how did Renesa affect the modern or the Renesa society, 16th and 17th century European society. The chief characteristics of the Renesa was its emphasis on humanism, which means man's concern with himself as an object of contemplation. This movement was started in Italy by Dante, by Petrarch, by Boccaccio in the 14th century. And from there, from Italy, it spread to other parts of Europe. In England, it became popular, thinking about human beings. This trend became popular during the Elizabethan period. This movement, which focused its interest on the proper study of mankind, had a number of subordinate trends. The first in importance was the rediscovery of classical antiquity, as I told you in the previous lecture, and particularly of ancient Greece. During the medieval period, the tradition-bound Europe had forgotten the liberal tone of old Greek world and its spirit of democracy and human dignity. So once you forget the liberal tone, what happens? People become fanatic. People become narrow-minded. They start thinking on the religious lines which they misinterpret in various ways. So with the revival of interest in Greek classical antiquity, the new spirit of humanism made its impact on the Western world. The word Renesa, I am again telling you, the word Renesa means rebirth. Re means again and naissance means birth, which is a French word. Who was reborn? It was human spirit that was reborn or reawakened after the long sleep, long slumber in the Middle Ages. During the Middle Ages, this rebirth for reawakening was brought about by a revival of interest in the culture, in the civilization of ancient Greece and ancient Rome. Renesa, this word comes from the French word for rebirth. An intense interest in and learning about classical antiquity was reborn after the Middle Ages, in which classical philosophy was largely ignored or forgotten. During the Middle Ages, classical knowledge, classical philosophy was ignored. But now there was regenerated interest in classical philosophy. Classical means Greek and Latin, Roman. Renesa thinkers considered the Middle Ages to have been a period of cultural decline. They sought to revitalize their culture through re-emphasizing classical texts and classical philosophies. They expanded and they reinterpreted rather, creating their own style of art, their own style of philosophy, their own style of scientific inquiry. They started questioning the old dogmas. There are many causes to the Renesa. The first is the Bubonic Plague, also known as the Black death. Adversity brings great knowledge also with it. So this plague spread throughout Europe like wildfire during the 1300s, but ultimately led to good chances in business and trade in places like Italy. Large number of people died, and there was shortage of labor. So Italy moved away from meager grain sales to the sales of fine items like wine, oil, cheese and leather goods. Earlier there were grains. They sold only grains. Italy's central location made it a great hub for business and trade with the countries of Northern Europe. So Italy came into prominence during the Renesa, and Italy was known as Rome during those, not as Italy. The Renesa started in Italy and spread to the rest of the Europe. To understand how this spark of rebirth came about, it is important to know what was going on in history prior to this, prior to Renesa, prior to reawakening, prior to rebirth of the classical philosophy. The Black Death swept across Europe, a plague that severely damaged the European population. Political and economical instability were major conflicts that were tearing the continent of Europe apart. The Renaissance was exactly what Europe needed to get back to their feet. Science, literature, art and politics were all brought back to life and amped up during this time period. Astronomy, physics, geography and production are just a few of the subjects that were advanced during the Renaissance. The invention of the printing press by Gutenberg came about, which made intellect easier to spread, and it made it more common. Knowledge, spread, and the books became cheaper and newspapers came into existence. This was one of the most important advancements as it paved the way for learning. Learning, reached to the masses. They could read the books and they could, read the theories. They could have first-hand glimpse of the literature. Renesa was the new idea that social class didn't have to dictate your wealth. This thought was generated. For the first time, people realized that they could work hard to earn money and then rise in society, rather than to let the class they were born into dictate their financial freedom. They felt it for the first time that they could rise from lower to higher classes by working hard. Earlier, it was the class which they were born in which decided their status. So this all changed the European society.